This is the former and five-time World Madden champ, Jordan 13-8, and you're listening to the Hidden Oaks Overdose Football Fix.
It is Saturday, September 2nd, 2023, Jesus Christ, 8 a.m. sharp. This is podcast number 145. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hidden Oaks Overdose Football Fix podcast. I am one of your lovely hostesses, the Garlic Johnson. We are joined, as always, by your other lovely hostess, the Joshua Mitchell. Josh, say hi to the folks out there.
Hi, folks.
Walters has been very consistent. He has been here the last 3 Saturday mornings at 8 a.m., so we got to give him a little shout out. Very consistent, Walters. We appreciate it. We appreciate everyone. I am Groot, Jesus Christ. He must have watched a Guardians movie recently. We do appreciate everyone who does chat along with us in the Discord and listen live. So, Walters, another shout out to you. We also thank and love at Levi Oki on Instagram. He is or at Levi Oki Illustration on Instagram. He is our beautiful artist who's responsible for all our art. So, thank you very much, Levi, aka Caramel Bear. And yeah, Josh, how we doing, pal?
Durin, how you durin?
For a Saturday morning, I'm feeling pretty good. It's the final weekend before we have. I'll put it this way: it's the last weekend we have without NFL football, real NFL football, not that preseason nonsense, until the third week in February. So it's fucking time, Josh. We've waited all the weeks, all the days, all the months, and we are here at the doorstep of football. And I'm genuinely as excited as I can be right now. I don't know how excited I am, but I'm excited as I can be. How do you feel about football right around the corner? First game Thursday night, Chiefs-Lions.
I am happy.
I am convinced. That was, wow, you really sold it.
Well, it's like I'm really excited for football to start, but I'm also really not excited for it to end in February. And it should just be a year-round. It should just be a year-round sport. And that's all it should be. Health? Who cares? Just make them play. 52-week season.
Oh my God, starting to sound like slavery, Josh. I want to be careful. I mean, it would be. I struggle with it because I think I would enjoy more football generally, but I don't think, I thought the 16-game season was the perfect regular season. We already have one more game than that. I think I'd be fine with a decent summer league. If you could take some of the 2s and 3s out of the NFL and throw them into another league that played during the spring or summer, I think I'd tune in more casually than the NFL for sure. But I think I'd watch that more regularly. I could do with more football. But at the same time, I think one of the things that makes football so great is the limited number of games, is the whatever. It's the anti-baseball. We don't need, 160, 180, whatever the fuck games they play these days. That's too many games. And so I think the number of games is what brings us back and makes us so excited about the season that we're about to go down. But we don't have to talk about all that because we'll be talking more about the season next week in our Tuesday and our Saturday show, getting back to 2 a week, kids. It is exciting times. But Josh, what are we here to do today?
Football.
Is that you and I? We're doing football?
Football.
Are you broken? Is that all you can say is football?
Football.
Well, because Josh is just so excited he can't say other words, I will let everyone know we are here to draft the grade, or we are here to grade the drafts of the Hidden Oaks, the Hidden Oaks Redraft League. I keep putting the wrong letters in the wrong words. Our quote-unquote league of record for those of you fantasy footballer fans. This is our league that kind of started it all. It's the league we try and get the most participation and listenership out of. It comes and goes over the years, but it's kind of what brought Josh and I here. And so we're going to go ahead and grade our draft. Did not get any fan participation, draft graders. Walters, looking at you. So Josh and I will take the reins. Last year, though, I will say Walters, I think, gave the worst grade to our eventual champion. So maybe
I think he did it the year before, too, to be honest.
Maybe we should just leave him alone. Speaking of, Josh, I'll use that as a transition. I just vaguely have up the draft grades from last year. We're not going to go too in-depth into it, but it looks like Eric was our champion. He was in the draft number 8 spot. He got an A from Football Guys, and then it looks like Walters and or Jack gave him a 4, or ranked him 4th. Must be. I don't know who that was. And then Al gave him a C+. I should have marked these things better last year, but oh well. So it looks like, the football guys had it right on our eventual champ. They only gave one other A, and that was to Nikita. I believe she came in fourth. Bradley was in the championship game, the championship loser. He got a B. So, I mean, it looks like the football guys had a decent time drafting you, or a decent time grading you, and I did not grade last year. We just picked our favorite and least favorite players. And, yeah, so, we're not the best, we're not the worst, but I see you did just open the document. Is there anything you see popping out here as you've looked at it for 10 seconds, or should we just move on to our grades for this year?
No, we're good.
All right, sounds good. I do remember coming out of last year, I absolutely hated my team, and I don't feel the same way this year. So we're hoping things turn around.
Well, it is every other for you.
Every odd year I'm doing good. So this year I'm destined to make it to the championship and lose. It's been my tradition for the last 3 years, or my last 3 cycles. So this year, I mean, I'm already destined. Like, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter who I draft. It doesn't matter what I do. I will make it to the championship, and I will lose. So that'll be nice. All right, Josh. So we have our big draft board up here. It is in a beautiful Excel spreadsheet. Do you want to just go down the line? Do you want to go from the first draft position all the way to the 14th? Do you want to go in any sort of ranking system you had? I don't know if you did them or not. No, it looks like you started, but you couldn't get there. So we'll just go left to right, I think, starting at the first draft position. That work for you?
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you kind of go first here. Number 1 overall pick was Jer Bear, and he starts with Justin Jefferson. And from there, Josh, what do you think about his team?
I like it. It's going down the list. He obviously the first overall pick in a 14-person league. You're not getting another pick until 28. Right? Is that the math?
Correct. That's right.
And so it's a struggle bus. Obviously, with the back-to-back 28, 29, it makes it a little bit more tolerable, but you're still missing out on quite a bit of talent between that first pick. So going with kind of the consensus best wide receiver, best player in a PPR league, I would say that's kind of the consensus is Justin Jefferson. Some may say CMC, but JJ has had, back-to-back great seasons. Christian McCaffrey has been hurt a couple times. And so who knows? Plus, they did just say, obviously it was after our draft, but they said that CMC is going to be kind of given a little bit more rest than he was in Carolina. So who knows? Obviously, you'd hope that his production and his efficiency would increase, but JJ is up there, especially with there's not really many people to get the ball in Minnesota these days other than TJ. And who knows about Addison yet, but I like his running backs, Travis Etienne and Aaron Jones with his second and third round pick. Aaron Jones being the 11th running back off the board, if I'm just guessing based on
Sure, yeah, I'm not going to crank those numbers up, but sure, it's
13.
Right-ish.
So yeah, he took the 12th and 13th running back off the board at Travis Etienne and Aaron Jones. I think that's a pretty solid combo for where he got him. I had Etienne last year. He's a solid player. Gets quite a few yards, gets quite a few points. And Aaron Jones is very, very efficient. Then after that, I like his tight ends, George Kittle, and then with Mr. Irrelevant, Gerald Everett. Everett did beat me 1 week last year, probably with the only week that he scored points. He has Kirk, so he's got the Kirk JJ stack, which has been nice. Brian Robinson as a kind of a flex backup RB is not a bad pick, not a bad play. Same with Kenneth Gainwell. Not so sure how I feel about Godwin or Pittman just based on their last season and their new quarterback situations. But overall, I like his team.
Yeah, I mean, I won't add too much because I think you did a really good job going in depth there.
What's that supposed to mean?
I'm just saying I'm not going to try and make it go on too long so we don't have to make the people sit through, a super long podcast. All I was going to say was that I kind of had my own rough grading system. You and I were talking about a pre-pod, and from his starting running backs and his starting wide receivers, I liked his wide receivers much more than I like his running backs, even though he did go running backs first. Of course, with JJ, that's going to carry it, but then Godwin and Pittman, I think, will be okay. I mean, they're both in teams with questionable quarterbacks at this point just because we don't know how they're going to produce. but I still think they're going to be fine. This should be their, the top or the second guy on their roster. And then for tight end, I agree that George Kittle should be one of the top dogs. I'd keep tight ends out of 7. I gave him a perfect 7 out of 7. And then for his bench, the bench was my least favorite part of Jeremy's team. He's got Adam Thielen, Brian Robinson, Kenneth Gainwell, Rashad Bateman. Those are guys I'm not really overexcited about. I don't see a lot of potential upside. I think we kind of know the role for all those people. Maybe the one with the most upside there is Rashad Bateman. Otherwise, so I scored benches out of 5, and I gave him a 2.5. But overall, Jeremy had a pretty decent team. I think he ranked third over... Or no, he tied 3 people for third. So pretty solid squad. I'm not fully impressed, but when you got 14 teams and like you said, you're drafting first, there's a big gap between your picks, so I understand. Moving on to me, Josh. I won't go super crazy. I'll go first, then you can talk about me. But I took CMC second overall, and then I was really surprised when Josh Jacobs came all the way back to me, especially when news broke earlier that day that he had gotten his little contract bump, very similar to the Saquon situation. So I take Christian McCaffrey, and then I just sweat until it comes all the way back to 27, and Josh Jacobs is there waiting for me. I was hoping and praying to get Jahmyr Gibbs or Joe Mixon, but Josh Jacobs fell instead, and he was the rushing leader last year, so I said, you know what, I'll take it. Then comes around to the 2-3 turn there for me, and I take Josh Allen. And then from there, I try and fill up on receivers just because, my first 3 picks had not gone receiver. And I thought I did a decent job. But overall, I think receiver for a starting group was obviously my worst starting group just because, I waited on them in the draft. My favorite part about my team, other than, my running backs, of course, my first 2 picks, I think would be my bench. I think I have a lot of high upside on the bench. I've got Jahan Dotson, Zay Flowers, Raheem Mostert. We just found out Jeff Wilson Jr. is out, and a Nietzsche, a chain, whatever. He's been banged up as well. So Raheem Mostert, I think, has a lot of early season upside, and then Romeo Doubs and Tanks Bigsby as well. So, potential points on the bench don't help you win matchups. It's your starters that matter. But in case anyone ever goes down or in case I need to start plugging and playing, I'm really excited about all the upside that I have lower in my draft, but that might not end up meaning anything in the end. Josh, what do you think about my squad?
Trash.
Hey.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I do like your running backs. Josh Jacobs, after the season he had last year and the news breaking, that is a good spot to get him. I don't know if he's going to live up to last year's potential just because, but because it was kind of it was a dominant season for him. And then they have a new quarterback, but who knows how that plays into it with the familiarity with that offense for Jimmy G. I do like your quarterback. Obviously, Josh Allen is a solid player. If he can avoid the turnovers, then he'd be even more solid player. He was, I think, still the QB 2 or 3 last year, even with all those extra turnovers. Christian Watson, I think, is a very solid pick in the 4th round. I will eventually be right about Mike Evans not having a good year, and I think that this is the year. Actually, he did have a bad year last year. He did have a bad year last year. He scored 22% of his total points in Week 17 last year. So,
did he still break 1,000 yards?
I have no idea, but does it matter if he scored 22% of his fantasy points in 1 week?
I mean, you won that week for sure.
Yeah, but it's not going to matter for you because you aren't going to be in the championship. David Montgomery, he's sitting behind Gibbs, but he's still a bruiser and he's a vet, so he may get some play time. I do like Jahan. I do like your depth in this league. I feel like you got some very solid depth. Tank Bigsby is going to take some reps from ETN. And so, yeah, I do like your team. The only question mark that I have is tight end, Sam Laporta Potty. Who knows how he's going to do. But we'll see. Obviously, that rookie tight end is always kind of a crapshoot dart throw, but so is tight end in general. So I do like your team.
Thanks, buddy. What do you think about Garrett, who drafted 3rd overall?
Oh, and I forgot to say for Jeremy, my favorite player in his draft was Aaron Jones, getting him that late. And then my least favorite was Godwin. Injuries and new quarterback and new system, yada, yada. My favorite player for you was Jahan Dotson, solid flex bench player. And then my least favorite, as I just alluded to, was Mike Evans. For Garrett, he started off 3rd overall pick, Travis Kelce, kind of the big shakeup of the draft. I don't think I'd ever seen Travis Kelce get mocked that early. Obviously, he is the number 1 tight end at 1,000 years old. But then, then he goes with Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow, Terry McLaurin. So he feels at the starting of the top 4 positions right away. And then he goes with Miles Sanders for some reason, and then George Pickens, Jordan Addison, Penny, Mooney, Tucker, Edwards. Yeah, players. As far as Garrett's team, I'm not a big fan of it. Yeah, he has a lot of middling players that could have solid seasons. We saw that with Joe Mixon a couple years ago. Joe Burrow and Travis Kelce are obviously going to be studs, but the rest of his players, he's banking on Addison having a good season, which it sounds like he's primed to do if he doesn't get caught speeding again. George Pickens, I think, is going to be a stud. He's going to be
speeding on the field, bro, right past the defenders.
Yeah. He was the lowest relative athletic score for wide receivers in the last 500,000 years, I heard. So that's not good news for athleticism, but he does have that separation ability, they say, so that's solid. As far as my favorite pick for him, I said Pickens. My least favorite was kind of the rest. I don't know. I wasn't a fan of Travis Kelce at 3. I think that's way too early for him. You could have gotten somebody else and then, done the whole fantasy football plug and play every week like I plan on doing for tight end.
See, I think this is where we have a great disagreement because I guess I don't mind. I mean, had I been 3rd, I probably would have taken Jamar Chase. But I don't hate Travis Kelce at 3. I think Travis Kelce has rocketed up the ADPs and the rankings and the cheat sheets and everything else. Like Travis Kelce is a top 5 pick these days, maybe 5 in most of the scenarios. But Travis Kelce has shot up the draft boards. And I think Garrett, I went through my little truthiness rating system, and I think Garrett might be my best team just because he is kind of solid everywhere. He has Joe Burrow, one of the very top QBs in the league. He was just one tier down. I had him in tier 2 just because Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen, especially in our 6-point touchdown passing league, they just kind of edged him out. I think, those 3 guys above him had all scored 400 points last year over the whole season, and Joe Burrow was at like 395.
You only have 4-point touchdowns.
Oh, well, no, we have... Oh, sorry, you're right. We have the extra passing yards. Excuse me. We have the little bump on passing yards. Anyways, Joe Burrow was the one person in those top 4 that didn't break 400, so that's where my tier break was. But I think Joe Burrow's an amazing starting quarterback. I like it. Joe Mixon and Miles Sanders, I think they're fine. Shout out to Audio Al, who's in the audience. He would tell you that Miles Sanders won him a fantasy league last year, so maybe the Miles Sanders that I've always hated, I shouldn't hate anymore. I'm trying to be more open-minded. His wide receivers, I think, is his worst starting group, just because, he didn't focus there. He went Terry McLaurin, George Pickens, and then looks like the flex could be Jordan Addison. So, Jordan Addison certainly isn't proven yet. And then George Pickens and Terry McLaurin, you question how well their offenses are going to do this year. Tight end was his worst position by far. His bench is his worst position by far. I'm not excited about Darnell Mooney. I'm not excited about Gus Edwards. I'm not excited about Paris Campbell or Cordell Patterson. So I think if Garrett loses starters, I think Garrett has a really bad season. But my truthiness score was heavily weighted toward his starters. And because of that, I think Garrett's going to be the best team in the league this year. Just based on, I don't know, if all the starters stay healthy. He's got solid studs in that lineup all across it. Moving on to Willie. Josh, he went Jamar Chase 4th overall, and then came back with Jamar Gibbs in the 2nd, then Chris Olave in the 3rd, and picked up Darren Waller in the 4th. He eventually gets Trevor Lawrence, so I gave a 7.5. I think his worst position is tight end. He punted the tight end position, which I understand. But Darren Waller should be okay. Or no, he didn't punt he grabbed Dalton Schultz at the end there. But I think Darren Waller should be okay. I don't know. I've wanted some shares of Darren Waller. I haven't gotten it. I don't think in any of my drafts this year because I think he's going higher than he should. But I do still think that Darren Waller will return value if he was drafted at ADP. His best group by far is his receivers. He's got Chase and then Olave, and that's an amazing starting 2. Josh, what do you think about Willie's squad here?
Yeah, I think there's football players on it.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I like it. I do agree that his wide receivers are pretty solid. His starting wide receivers. Bench, a little bit questionable. I'm not so sure. Sky Moore is a sophomore. He should have made a little bit of a jump between that 1st and 2nd year. But Quentin Johnson's a rookie. Obviously, he's an athletic freak, according to Herbert. And, he's a big boy that can run. And Keenan Allen's getting up there in age. Mike Williams is... he's solid, but he's had injury concerns in the past. Running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs, he's a rookie, but has been lighting it up in camp. James Cook, 2nd-year player. looked at as a 3-down back, they're saying. And then A.J. Dillon, big question mark, hasn't lived up to his potential. But who knows how that goes with a new quarterback, new kind of adjusting to it, probably a little bit different system this year. And so I do like those kind of that starting core. Darren Waller, I think, as the 4th tight end off the board is about right. Maybe would have gone Kittle. Actually, yeah, I would have gone Kittle over Waller at that point. But there has been a lot of hype of him coming out of camp for Waller. So I could see why he'd go that route. I do like all of his starters. I think that he does have a solid team going, and getting Jamar Chase at 4 definitely helps. And so, yeah, I do like Willie's team. My favorite pick for him was Waller, just based on the hype coming out. My least favorite was Sky Moore, just because of how, he could have gotten. Well, you know what, Sky Moore, I would have taken KJ Osborne over Sky Moore, I think, personally, or Kadarius Toney, who is on the same team as Sky Moore. But that's just me, and what do I know? I'm bad at everything I try.
Oh, Josh, what do you think about Jesse? He came in last place last year. Al was roasting him the whole draft, calling him Trash Can because that's who he wrote on his name tag. What do you think about the Trash Cans team? Will he be the Trash Can again?
Yeah, I think that Jesse is going to live up to that Trash Can name again. I do have a feeling that he might actually have to upgrade to a larger dumpster. I mean, it's a dumpster fire medallion, so if you can go larger than dumpster fire, we could call it. We'll just call it Canada.
Great bit, love it.
Austin Eckler, first pick for him, pick 5, very solid. I think. I think that that is the second best running back. And then he probably would have gone Kelsey if he was available. I think that would have been a solid play for him. Jonathan Taylor, not necessarily the best scenario for him right now, but going all the way down to the 7th round, he got Khalil Herbert, who I think is a stud, and should be solid for him to fill in. And then he's got Devonta Smith, Deontay Johnson, and Marquise Brown for wide receivers, and then that flex position as well. My favorite pick of his was Khalil Herbert. My least favorite, if I exclude Jonathan Taylor, just based on the situation he's in, I would say is Hollywood Brown, just because of that situation in Arizona. But who knows? Maybe Clayton Tune is gonna, sing his own tune and win some games.
Yeah, I'm certainly less high on Jesse's squad than you. I think Jesse was my lowest grade squad.
Oh, I'm not high on it. I think he's going to finish last. But.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. You sounded like you were saying some positive things, but yeah, Jesse's my last place team in my little truthiness rankings here. On tight end, he's got Cole Kmet and C.O., the guy from Tennessee. I'm going to try and pronounce that name. Jonathan Taylor missing 4 weeks. Jonathan Taylor missing 4 weeks and probably more does not help. His wide receivers, he has Devonta Smith, who's a 2, Marquise Brown and Deontay Johnson, who are basically 2s. I mean, there might be 1s on their team, but they're 2s in my heart. He could have had instead Keenan Allen or Deebo Samuel. I don't really I question why he took Devonta Smith there. But yeah, I don't really like Jesse's team from top to bottom. I question some of his picks, and he has 2 tight ends when he put in the position. So I don't know. I hate this team top to bottom. I'll move on to your squad, Squashy. You drafted 6th overall, and I remember at the draft you were salivating because Austin Eckler had already fallen to 5th, and you were praying for him to fall to 6th. Instead, you go what you've always done in this league because you kind of have to based on draft position. You took a receiver. You went Tyreek Hill, which I think is probably the 3rd best receiver. Some people would argue Kupp, but Kupp has potentially some hamstring injury, so I understand why you would want to avoid him. You go Garrett Wilson after that, and then Ramondre Stevenson in the 3rd. Josh, overall, I gave your team one of the better scores. I think you were tied for 3rd with 3 other people, so in that 3rd to 5th range for my little truthiness scale here. I think your worst group is your running backs by far. Ramondre Stevenson's going to get vultured by Ezekiel Elliott, Isaiah Pacheco, and DeAndre Swift. Are they really guys, or are they the guy, or Jags? Dude, I think they're more Jags. Your best group by far is your receivers. I gave you a perfect 10 out of 10. I think I only gave that to one other person. Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, and then DJ Moore. I mean, those starting receivers, assuming DJ Moore is in your flex more often than not, I think that's a very solid group. Tight end with Juwan Johnson, I still gave a 5. I think that was you might probably got the best value at tight end late in the draft there with Juwan Johnson. And then your bench, I think your bench has plenty of potential, plenty of upside. But yeah, I think your running backs are going to be what hold you back this year. And I think you know that just because it's not a position you focus too early. You wouldn't receive a receiver to start, but you could be carried. It's a full PPR league by the receivers, and you've got some receiving backs. So we'll see what you do. What do you think about your own squad, Josh? How do you feel leaving draft day, and how do you feel now?
Yeah, I feel like pretty much what you said is accurate. Isaiah Pacheco, he was one of those picks where it was just like, oh boy, I don't want to take him, but I don't also like anybody else that's available. I shouldn't get a fourth wide receiver when you can only play 3 max. So that's why I took Pacheco. Swift is, the injury concerns are there, and there is that, it's kind of a rotation of running backs. So it's more so just I'm hoping that he has efficient plays if I have to put him in. If Isaiah Pacheco does play like he did last year at the end of the season, I do think that he's a solid player, but he's not going to, be a top player. Ramondre, I think that Zeke is going to vulture some touchdowns, but that's going to be goal line work. And, when you score from 50 yards every time you touch the ball, it doesn't make a difference. I went with the Rodgers-Wilson stack because of the chemistry that they appear to have. So I'm banking on that winning me some weeks, assuming they both stay healthy. But yeah, obviously my wide receiver group is going to be my strength, and I'm banking on Juwan Johnson taking another step forward with his ability at tight end. And so I always got to go with Juwan Johnson because he is the tight end that cost me the first overall pick 2 years ago and deflate these balls. So he's always going to be my starting lineup, just to have a petty proving point.
All right, what do you think about Brian's squad, the Sky Busters?
Yeah, he busted that Sky. Brian going with the back-to-back. He didn't have many head-scratching picks this year. So he did say that this was the first year he studied. And so Cooper
created
Kupp,
his own rankings.
Yeah, so Cooper Kupp as a with that injury that came out after our draft, as far as just it's lingering and it's day to day. But at the 7th overall pick, not a bad pick. T. Higgins, good solid number 2 wide receiver. I think I would have gone Garrett Wilson over T. Higgins. So when Garrett Wilson fell to me, I almost pushed Al out of the way to grab the sticker myself.
Didn't want anyone to fuck it up.
Yeah. And so I think those are solid. And then you went with back-to-back running backs, Rachaad White and Alexander Mattison. I think that those are 2 solid backs. Mattison, we know who he is. He's not going to be a world beater by any means, especially in a more pass-friendly offense with JJ and TJ. So, who knows? That might help him. Rachaad White is kind of a question mark in that offense, just because that entire offense is a question mark. But, Kyle Pitts, hopefully he has a turnaround season. They throw the ball 10 times a game. Hopefully he gets 7 of those targets. I do love that Tyler Lockett pick. He was my favorite on his team. My least favorite was Pitts just because of the passing numbers. Gabe Davis, Zeke, Tyler Algier. His bench I'm not too fond of as much, but overall I'm proud of him for waiting until the 13th and 14th round to draft a kicker and defense.
Nice. Yeah, I think Brian made some good moves. Overall, I did have him as one of my worst teams, though I do agree with the value on Tyler Lockett. That's probably his best value pick of the draft. And Rachaad White and Alexander Mattison could prove to be okay backs. They're volume plays, but I didn't rate them very high. But I'm just saying they could be higher than I rate them. I think taking Dak in around 11, I don't like that. I think I probably would have preferred someone like Jared Goff or something. If you're going to be punting the quarterback position, take someone with more upside than Dak. I think that they lost their gunslinger of an OC, Kellen Moore, and now I forget who their OC is now, but I think Big Mike said they're going to want to run the ball a lot more. So Dak's going from his highest high with Kellen Moore to probably, I'm not saying Dak's going to be bad. They won, 11 games or 13 games or whatever. Like Dallas was one of the best teams in the NFC last year, but I think their offensive prowess is going away and they're going to a more run-centric game. So I don't like that Dak pick. I think Goff or someone like that would have been better. We already talked about the running backs. I didn't like those. His best group is his wide receivers. That's what happens when you go back-to-back first overall. I think Kyle Pitts should be fine. I still gave him a higher score. I gave him the same score as Juwan Johnson. We'll see how he goes. You'd rather have Jesse's squad over Brian's? Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me, Walters. They were both, bottom of the barrel for me, but Jesse might have a little bit more upside. And then I think his bench is okay. I really like Gabe Davis and Ezekiel Elliott on the bench. Michael Gallup should be okay. Latavius Murray, he's already dropped him and picked up someone else, so that's one pick you could flack him for in the draft, but Brian made up for it. But I don't see Brian punching much higher than maybe the 7th seed this year, but I could be wrong. But Skybusters has always surprised me so far, so we'll see what he does this year. Moving on to the doctor, we got Jamie here. She's drafting, what is this, 8th overall? 1, 2, 3. Saquon Barkley I think is pretty solid. Then goes Jalen Hurts in the 2nd, grabbing one of the top QBs. I think running back and QB are her top 2 positions, so it makes sense that's where she drafted. Najee Harris in the 3rd, then T.J. Hawkinson in the 4th. Another guy I've wanted a lot of shares of this draft season, but I think because of the little homer bump, we happen to be playing in Minnesota markets. Or I guess, Josh, I don't know if you've seen it, if you've had other drafts with people that I'm not with, but I've wanted T.J. Hawkinson, but he seems to be pushed up just a little bit over where he should be going, and I've never had the chance to get him, but he's someone I think will be absolutely great this year. If he gets the volume he was seeing with Kirk last year, TJ Hawkinson could be threatening the managers or Kelsey, depending on what kind of seasons they have. But all that's to say, I really like Hawk this year, and I've wanted shares of him, but I haven't been able to work it out with where I've been in drafts. I think Jamie's worst spot might be her bench. I don't see a lot of upside. I think she had a lot of safe players on the bench. Juju, I don't see a high ceiling for. Devin Singletary, I don't see a high ceiling. Alan Lazard, maybe, if he can rekindle things with Rodgers there in Green Bay East. And then Deuce Vaughn. I mean, I don't see really a lot of upside on that bench at all, and when you're looking at the bench, you kind of want a little bit of upside, so I don't see it for Jamie, but overall, I think her starters are studs, and she was the 2nd best team in my grading scale, so Jamie bound for the playoffs in my mind. Josh, what do you think about Jamie?
I like her running backs, the starting ones. Question marks on the starting wide receivers with Mike Williams, with the injuries I talked about. If he stays healthy, solid wide receiver. I do love Brandon Ayuk. That is something that I've made known in previous podcasts. I think he's a stud, and he had a great season last year, I thought. Not a big fan of the Juge. Alan Lazard is an okay flex, I think. I think that she doesn't have much of a flex spot when I'm looking at the team, at least not a consistent one. It would, she might toss in Juge or Singletary or Lazard.
Maybe she'll throw in Dulcich, dude. You don't know. Yeah,
who knows? That would be something. Jamie is always kind of the one that scratch heads. She's zigging when everyone else is zagging. She's in reverse, or she's in drive as she's in the garage, not going out. And so taking the 49ers defense at the 7th overall pick, or 7th round pick.
That's not the 7th overall pick. Jesus,
7th
give her a
overall
little bit
pick
more
in the
credit.
7th round.
Jesus.
The 7th round defense is just bonkers, considering she did not have a flex at that point. She had all of her starters except a flex, but yet she goes with that defense. I would have taken every single other position player on the board until round 11 when the New York Jets were taken.
To your point, I don't want to cut you off during your spiel here, but to your point, Jamie has always zagged while everyone else is zigging, and it worked out for her first couple years. Her last couple years, it hasn't worked out, but I appreciate that she kind of sticks with who she is, and she doesn't really change based on how she did last year. She's like, I know my strategy. I know how I want to draft my team. It's worked for me sometimes. It hasn't worked for me other times, but she has stayed consistent with how she kind of makes her team, and so I applaud her for that, if nothing else. It might work out again this year. Who's to say?
Yeah. But yeah, so not the biggest of fans, obviously. She does have a very solid starting core with her tight ends, running backs, and quarterback. That might be enough to win her most of the games. I know she's going to beat me after the spiel I just went on about taking the Niners in the 7th.
Oh, yeah. Dude, Niners will put up 30 that week.
Yep, absolutely. Hopefully I play her week 9. But yeah, Gar, move on. Actually, my favorite pick for her, Brandon Ayuk, least favorite, Niners defense, as I said.
Spoiler, I did rank the draft teams. I think Jamie has one of the best new draft team names this year, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Moving on to Jamie's husband, we go from Mrs. Hammer to Mr. Hammer. They're drafting back-to-back. I would love to call it collusion, but they would never. So Hammer takes Stephon Diggs 9th overall, and then Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd, Mark Andrews in the 3rd. Usually, most people, the quote-unquote experts, advise you either go early with a quarterback or a tight end and not both, but I know Hammer in this league has talked a lot about wanting a stud at each of those positions, so Hammer lives out his strategy. I don't hate it, but Diggs, Mahomes, Andrews, we'll see. I mean, if Andrews bounces back and has the great year, I mean, he was the tight end 1 just 2 years ago. If that Ravens offense goes pass heavy and Andrews is a big beneficiary, then that will be a solid 3rd round pick, a great 3rd round pick. Overall, I think his running back's his worst position. Again, makes sense when you don't draft your first one until the 4th round. Kenneth Walker and Dalvin Cook, though, both guys in timeshares. That's kind of what he was stuck with. It looks like he could have had Kamara if he wanted. He could have had the better of the two in Breece Hall. Could have had Cam Akers if he's looking for someone with a bit more of a volume play. But Hammer took probably his guys, and so that's the way it goes. Also, Drake London and OBJ is his kind of second receiver and potential flex. I don't know. I mean, his potential flex either OBJ or Michael Thomas. Old guys that, have all the talent in the world, but are they still at their peak performance? No. We'll see how they do. Overall, I think Hammer was more of a middle-of-the-road team for me. He would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, he's literally right in the middle, like that 7, 8 spot. So Hammer, you're maybe pushing the playoffs, but not for me. I really don't like your bench of Kareem Hunt. Jalen Warren is probably your best bench player, and Jamison Williams and Darnell Washington. You already took Mark Andrews. I'm not sure why you took a backup tight end. Walters hates backup tight ends, so Walters would give Hammer an F-. Jalen Warren is potentially the only pick I like on his team that's on the bench. Hammer's middle of the road for me. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I said Jalen Warren was my favorite pick of his. Not a big fan of Drake London. Similar to what I said about Kyle Pitts, just the volume wasn't there last year. Don't see it being there this year. Stephon Diggs, I think that's an okay pick from where, that's a 5th wide receiver off the board. I might have gone Chubb in that situation just because of the volume. I might have even gone like A.J. Brown or CeeDee Lamb over Stephon Diggs just because. The quarterback, tight end in the first 3 rounds. I did that last year in Victoria's Secret. Hated it the entire year, mainly because it was Josh Allen and Kyle Pitts, and we all know how Kyle Pitts did last year. Kenneth Walker, I think, even though he is in a timeshare, he was very efficient last year with his carries. He finished very solid. Dalvin Cook should be okay because they're not going to want to. Yeah, they're not going to want to rush Breece back. Kareem Hunt is going to sign with the team. If he signs with Indy, and they say deuces to Jonathan Taylor, I think that's a very solid pick. Obviously, you know that I have Kareem Hunt in most leagues. I'm also just sitting here shoving horseshoes up my bum and trying to get it so he does get signed by a team that needs a running back, whether it's Miami or Indy, because I have him in the Champions Branch Out League, and really he might end up in my starting lineup before he makes a team because of how my team looks. Or my running backs, I should say. But yeah, Darnell Washington, big question mark there, mainly because he's the tight end 2 on both teams, Hammers and the Pittsburgh's team. And big question marks.
Yeah.
Moving on to T. We've got somebody who wasn't golfing, but he did end up going to work an hour in, so who knows? I do think that T had a very solid draft. Nick Chubb at 8, and then Bijan Robinson, which is bonkers to me at that level.
Al was going crazy about that, dude.
Yeah. Nikita was panicking. I do know that she kind of is upset with her first 2 picks.
Really?
Just based on
she hates Dallas.
No, well, I mean, who doesn't?
We'll get there.
But she was not expecting Derek to go back to back so quickly, and so she knew that the timer was running, and that timer it can be daunting.
Yeah, you people wanted it, okay?
I didn't, and so she really wanted. She does kick herself for not getting Bijan. I think. I've said Keenan Allen's getting up there in age. He's still okay. DeAndre Hopkins still okay. Hopefully. Dallas Goedert, I like. He's a solid tight end. Not gonna break any records, but yeah. Overall, I do like his running backs a lot. His tight end, Tua as a quarterback, if he stays healthy, is solid. His wide receivers are his biggest question mark in my opinion. And so I think he has a very solid pick or solid team. I don't know how it all depends on how his wide receivers produce, though.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think his wide receivers, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, they're all number one guys in their offense. I mean, Keenan Allen's going to have a good year. DeAndre Hopkins, you question because that's the Derrick Henry team. And then Brandon Cooks, Brandon Cooks is not the number one, excuse me. I thought he was still in Houston. He is the number 3 in Dallas, but they went out of their way to sign him. So there's always potential there, but I don't think that's a great one. J.K. Dobbins might be the better flex play for T most weeks. I think relatively to their kind of out of overall, I think his biggest question mark will be Tua. Just kind of that middle land, no man's land for QBs. I'm not a big mid-round QB guy. Either take a top guy or wait till the end. I don't think the difference between Tua and Daniel Jones, for example, who went in the 14th round, I don't think there's a big difference. So I don't like that Tua pick necessarily, but again, he could be healthy, could be all right. T was a worse team than Hammer for me, so he would have been that kind of 8-9 spot. I don't see T making the playoffs, but anything's possible. Moving on, Josh, to Eric, the reigning champion. He got stuck with the 11th draft spot. He got final choice. His ball was never pulled. He goes Tay, Devontae Adams, and then DK Metcalf, and then Amari Cooper in the 4th with Lamar Jackson in the 3rd. So I gave him the other 10 out of 10, Josh. Like I said, you had a 10 out of 10 on receivers, and then Eric also has 10 out of 10 out of receivers for me. Excellent spot. Lamar Jackson should be fine, especially if he goes to a bit more pass-happy play. We do reward passing yards just slightly more in this league, but when you're throwing 300 yards plus a game, it can make a difference. I honestly really like his running back play for about week 4 on. He has Alvin Kamara and Javonte Williams. I think those guys should be studs once they're back and healthy. He has Jamal Williams to fill in the meantime, and then Jerick McKinnon or Clyde Edwards-Helaire is kind of a 2 just for a couple weeks. He'll probably have to play one of them. He could even pick someone up like Zach Moss or something, whoever ends up starting for Indy if it's not Kareem Hunt. But I think Eric's got a sneaky squad here. He's one of the people I had tied for 3rd, and I might give him the edge. Well, he's tied with you and Jeremy. No, I can't give him the edge over you or Jeremy. But I think Eric has a sneaky good team from that 11 spot. Zach Ertz and Dalton Kincaid are his biggest question marks at tight end. I don't think there's going to be any passing volume in Arizona for Ertz to succeed with, so it's just a matter of Kincaid get enough production early with Allen to do something. Who's to say? But I really like Eric's squad, and the reigning champ, I think, has a good case for the playoffs this year. Josh, what do you think about the reigning champ?
Yeah, I do like his team. Obviously, Devontae, near and dear to my heart. I was hoping he'd fall to me in the 2nd, which would never happen. DK, solid. I mean, they were the number 1 offense last year. Lamar should be fine. Cooper, he should be okay if Deshaun Watson gets his head out of his ass. I mean, yeah, for waiting until the 4th or the 5th round in a 14-team league to get your first running back and taking one on a suspension, he ended up okay. So Kamara, Javonte should be solid. Jamal filling in for Kamara until then is solid. Jerick is a big player. And so you're hoping that they use him like they did at the end of the season where he's getting a ton of plays. Kadarius Toney is, they're saying he's a wide receiver 1 out there in KC. We'll see if he could stay healthy. I agree that the tight end position is kind of his biggest question mark. He has a backup quarterback and a backup tight end. I think Walters had a stroke somewhere about this, but my favorite pick for him, Javonte. My least favorite was Cooper, just because of it would have been nice to get a running back. Cooper's going to be
solid, dude.
He is. No, I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying that, at that point, I might have gone more of the running back market.
This is the reigning champ, Josh. Who are you to question?
Yeah, well, does he have a podcast? So he doesn't know shit. He got lucky. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not saying Cooper's going to do bad, but it's just, I just, for some reason, you have your truthiness score. I have mine. My truthiness score is, he makes
all the running backs that went Kenneth Walker, Alexander Madison, Miles Sanders, James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco, Dalvin Cook. He basically punted the position. He's like, no one's going to take the guy I want. And I think he's right. The only one I would argue maybe should have, he could have taken the Miles Sanders, but otherwise those other guys are a bunch of question marks. I love Eric's team. I'm definitely not sucking up to the champ for hopefully good karma.
Yep, no, that's fine. And I'm sure that if Brees Hall would have been there still, he might have taken him. But okay, yeah, so I guess, yeah, looking at the running backs, Kenneth Walker, I may have gone with if you're not too concerned about that timeshare. But, whatever. Moving on to Brad. I think Brad's had Derrick Henry. Oh, no, never mind. I think Garrett had him for a bunch of years too. But those two might be the only two that have ever had Derrick Henry shares in this league.
No one else gets to touch him.
But, Brad goes Derrick Henry, Jalen Waddle, Debo, Brees. That was his first 4 picks. I think Brad had a pretty solid draft. Jalen Waddle, he's not the wide receiver 1, but that offense is high flying. And then Debo, if he stays healthy, is always, fun to watch. He gets the ball a lot. And then, CMC is going to take some away. Ayuk is going to take some away. Kittle's going to take some away. So he should be, it should be where he is efficient with when he gets the ball. They're not going to focus on him. Brees, when he's healthy, solid. And then, you get into his tight end. I like Pat Freiermuth. Deshaun Watson, he got some flack from that one. Mid-round quarterback, you and I kind of feel the same on that. I don't know if I value Deshaun Watson over guys like Daniel Jones or, even Anthony Richardson, who was taken in the 14th round. I probably would have waited till the very end to get a quarterback if over Deshaun Watson, taking somebody like Javonte Williams or Brandon Ayuk. Oh, no, because he has Debo, but Tyler Lockett or something like that. But overall, I do like Brad's team. My favorite pick for him was KJ Osborne, Minnesota Viking. I think KJ is a sneaky, solid flex play. And my least favorite was Jeff Wilson Jr., mainly because he took him in the 7th round and he's not even going to play this year. But he didn't know that at the time.
Sure. I mean, we don't know that he's not going to play this year. But yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think Brad nailed his first 4 picks, going Henry, Waddle, Debo, and Brees. From there, I mean, Bradley, similar to Jamie, he's someone who likes to draft out his starters first, and it's kind of just like more of an old school draft thought. Maybe I don't want to say inexperienced because Bradley was in 2 different championships last year. So like, there's definitely something to be said about drafting all your starters, but just most people or most quote unquote experts won't recommend it. So yeah, in the 5th round, I really scratched my head at Pat Freiermuth. I don't think Bradley needed to take him there. And I do, to your point earlier, Josh, I definitely do value Deshaun Watson more than Daniel Jones, or at least I think the ceiling is higher for Deshaun Watson than Tua or Geno or Aaron Rodgers even. The ceiling is higher. Will he put it all together? Who's to say? And maybe Daniel Jones is a better comparison. But Daniel Jones went in the 14th round and Deshaun Watson went in the 6th. I think Bradley definitely could have waited. Bradley could have waited 5 rounds and got Deshaun Watson. And again, like I said, Pat Freiermuth, I didn't agree with either. I think Elijah Mitchell could be a very sneaky pick for Brad. That's someone I've been eyeing up later in my drafts. So I think, using your favorite to not least favorite, I think Elijah Mitchell might be his favorite value pick for me. And Joshua Kelly, he's going to drop immediately, so I don't even know how he drafted him. But overall, Bradley's a bottom 14 in the league for me. So a solid start to the draft, but then when he goes tight end and quarterback in the 5th and 6th, and they're not super good options, he kind of falls apart there for me. So that's what I think about Brad. Moving on to your lovely wife, Josh, Mrs. Mitchell, drafting at the 13th spot here. She hated her draft spot, but she came in 4th last year, so she really was nowhere near the top in the priority in picking her spot this year. She goes CeeDee Lamb and then Tony Pollard. She really is hoping that Dallas does things this year. And then taking Herbert in the 3rd, I don't hate. I would have maybe tried to grab like Dameon Pierce or something like that, and then hope to get Justin Herbert in the 4th. But I understand why she wanted to just lock in her quarterback. I get it. Overall, Nikita, again, is a lower team for me. She's actually 5th worst, so she's still in the double digits in rankings for me. 10th, I believe that would be. So yeah, I think her draft started okay with her first 2 picks. Having 2 players on the same team might be a little bit questionable, but if you believe in their production, it happens. I think her worst pick for me is probably Rondale Moore. I don't love it at all. Jonathan Mingo could be a sneaky pick, but yeah, I have Nikita not making the playoffs this year. Antonio Gibson, Samaje Perine, I think her bench might be her worst spot, and her starter's not that great either. Josh, what do you think about the wife squad?
So as somebody who has rocked the wide receiver running back combo many times in the past with Devontae and Jones when they were on the same team, I don't have an issue with that because you're banking on one of them being solid. CeeDee Lamb is, top 5 wide receiver in the NFL when Dak is accurate. Tony Pollard is a very solid running back as well. she, like I said, when we were talking about T's team, she was kicking herself that she went back to back Dallas players, but at the same time, she wasn't paying attention to that necessarily. She was just paying attention to kind of where they were on the tier chart.
Yep.
And so she would have gone. I feel like if we were to redo this whole thing, she would have gone Bijan over Tony. And so she is kicking herself about that. So she leaves most drafts hating her team. Last year, obviously, she did the same thing and she got fourth. I'm a big fan of Calvin Ridley. I think that that's a very solid pick. Calvin Ridley has the potential to be, a top 10 wide receiver, and he was like the 20th taken off the board in our draft.
We'll
so
see. He's been out of football for a couple years.
A year. And so I have quite a few shares of Calvin Ridley as well. James Conner, I actually think that last year I said James Conner would be trash, and he was. So 2 years ago, he led the league in touchdowns, I believe. Last year, I said he's not going to do anything. This year, getting him in the 5th round.
End of the 5th at that.
End of the 5th. I think that's a very solid value pick. There are some experts out there, if you want to believe them over us, that say that he is going to be kind of a league winner this year, just based on where he is getting drafted. So if that's the case, I think she got a very solid pick there. And so that's solid. Evan Engram he's a wide receiver. So I just noticed now that Evan Engram, Calvin Ridley, Jacksonville. So Jacksonville and Dallas are kind of her teams right now. She's hoping that they do solid. Both of them were playoff teams last year. Antonio Gibson is an okay flex. They were in like a 50% timeshare with Brian Robinson last year. We'll see if that trend continues, because Brian Robinson wasn't necessarily, he wasn't shooting it up like he was in the preseason. Oh, whoops.
Josh, come on.
I'm not a big fan of Rondale Moore, but I think Jonathan Mingo is a very solid pick. I think that's a sneaky pick with how him and Bryce Young are kind of meshing in Carolina.
Bryce is right, baby.
Yeah, so I think that Mingo was his name-o is a solid pick there. Same with Donta Foreman. Chicago has a stable of running backs. And so solid depth there. That was a 5th running back on her team. So who knows? And then I was proud of her. She waited for the 13th, 14th round to get a kicker in defense. And she doesn't have a backup tight end or quarterback, Walters.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure you do, Walters. All right, Josh. Well, that just leaves one more squad. What do we think about Derek in the 14 spot?
What can Brown do for you? Derek with A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the first 2 picks with 14-15. Very solid. And then, Jerry Jeudy, questionable with his injury, but like I said, I would have gone Ridley over that. I might have even gone Cooper over him as well, even though I did just rip Cooper a couple teams ago. But
sure did.
Dameon Pierce, I'm a big fan of. And then, he got Cam Akers in the 5th round. Who knows how that offense is going to look after last season. But then Christian Kirk as his wide receiver 4. I would think that, that's a very solid pickup or very solid pick there, because Christian Kirk was wide receiver 11 last year. So a very solid draft pick there. Who knows if it's because Calvin Ridley is on the team now that's why he dropped. I'm just saying that Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, they have the possibility to finish wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 this year. Absolutely zero bias from my Champions Branch Out League. So if somebody wants to send me an offer for like Christian Kirk, I'd be willing to trade minimum, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley level player. David Njoku, very solid tight end. I think he led the league in red zone shares last year. And then, you got Zach Charbonnet. Overall, Derek, I think he has a very solid team. He did not take 5 kickers like he did in Champions Branch Out. Waited till rounds 13 and 14 to get his quarterbacks, which is very interesting. But at the same time, he took Russell Wilson, hoping he improves, and then Anthony Richardson as a kind of a flyer to see how he starts off the season. Week 7 and week 9 might be a bit of an issue for him, considering all the buys I'm noticing. But I like his Christian Kirk pick. Not a big fan of the Treylon Burks pick.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I do think Derek nailed his first 3 picks. Again, I definitely would not. I guess I'm low on Judy this year, so I definitely would not have taken him to start the 4th. But again, what do I know? Al likes to say he hasn't seen me win yet, so maybe my football takes are all stale and bad. But yeah, I don't really like Judy in the 4th, so that's kind of Derek starts to go off the rails for me. And then David Njoku, I think he's a solid tight end. He's fine tight end, but he was definitely in that no man's land where Evan Ingram went to start the 6th, and then no, hindsight's 2020. But then Derek takes Njoku to start the 7th, and then another tight end doesn't get picked until the middle of the 9th. So I mean, Derek did not need to take Njoku there. He definitely could have punted to his next turn. So I think that just kind of detriments his team as well. Derek's a bottom. He's the second to last team for me in my little truthiness rankings. Nico Collins, Treylon Burks, maybe they have some upside there, but yeah, his starting quarterback is very questionable. His starting running backs are questionable. His best group is his receivers, and then his bench is just slightly above the middle line for me. But I hate Derek's team mostly. So Derek, I did not see you doing good things this year. That's all the teams, Josh, and looks like we went to keep, trade, cut, and looks like Brad had the best squad there. Do you think keep, trade, cut's a bunch of ninnies or a bunch of fools, or what do you think? Did you see kind of what they were ranking higher than other things, or why'd they give Brad number 1? Did you see or no?
No, I did not see. And so we'll pretend like it's the best just because I was 4th, and I'm okay with being 4th overall in that one. Looks like I was 4th in a lot of different categories here. So cool.
Yeah, you were 4th for keep, trade, cut. You were 4th for fantasy pros, and you were 4th for the garlic truthiness score, dude.
Yeah, so it's all right. I think we changed our pay scale if where 4th place gets all of the money. So
it's an interesting strategy. Yeah, I actually think fantasy pros, they have a little team analyzer, a league analyzer tool. They had garlic with number 1 of the power rankings. I had a perfect 100 out of 100 score. Shout out ladies, shout out fantasy pros, and they had Brad all the way at the bottom. So there's a big difference between keep, trade, cut and fantasy pros. We will see who ends up being a little bit more accurate. I tend to think fantasy pros is a little bit better, not only because I shaded Brad, but because I think my team is great. Josh, the most important thing before we go here, the team name rankings, and some teams were disqualified because they didn't even change their name. Shout out to the Gophs, dude, for winning a barn burner on Thursday. All right, Al, college football Saturday, he's on fire about it. Before we go, Josh, we need to rank these the new team names, and I already did mine. I guess you could adjust your own, or you could agree with mine. I think the best team name this year would be Jeremy. And he incorporates 2 different players, so that's a bonus for him as well. But he went with "Kiddle Me This, Bateman." I think that's a beautiful little name. I thought, you definitely see plenty of names online, or names that people like to pull from, and that one's unique to me. I haven't seen that yet. Maybe other people have used it, but I haven't seen it, so I love that from Jeremy. Josh, let the people know what your team name is, because I think you did a very good job as well. I'm not seeing this online anywhere else.
Well, Kiddle Me This, Batman or Bateman, I have seen Ridley this with the Calvin Ridley for Dynasty. So I have seen that one. Jack's on, Jack's off, Mr. Miyagi, shout out. That's, I don't know. I think I'd seen it on Reddit somewhere. And I was like, I'll keep that in mind. It was like on a Dynasty league where someone was just saying just random Jack's on, Jack's off. I don't know if it was a team name thing or just Dynasty league. Sure. The other one that I want to try and get to fit is better to Jack's off than get Jack's on. But who knows? And then
Jack's did in San Diego, dude.
I know you said you like Jamie's team name, but I don't understand it.
So Josh, she's pronouncing the last name wrong. To be fair, I'm not sure she understands how to pronounce Brandon Ayuk, but she went with I don't I yuck my yum. So that's a thing a lot of people are saying is don't yuck my yum, especially usually in a sexual context. But she's saying don't I yuck my yum, dude. I think it's a great team name, even if she's saying the name wrong. I love it, Jamie. She's my 3rd best team name. The other ones aren't so great, but because they updated their team name and they kept it with their players, I like it. Eric Lights Kamara Jackson. I think that's nice. He's able to get get 2 players in there. I went with Stairway to Evans. I've had a musical theme like the past 3 years with the Alan Parsons Project and then the Jefferson Starship. I'm now on to the Led Zeppelin Stairway to Evans. And I even, I will say, I think my picture game is the best. I always have a brand new picture each year. And this year I put a crude picture of Mike Evans on the Stairway to Heaven Led Zeppelin art. And then Nikita's, Josh, she had so many options, especially with Mingo or other players, but she went with this just in. I give her credit. She changed her team name. She tried something. But, Josh, I think you have to admit that Nikita probably could have done better with her team name. What do you think?
I mean, everybody could do better with their team name, but she changed it. It's still preseason, just getting into the swing of things.
She's top half of the league. She's 6th. I'm not, again, I'm not trying to hate on Nikita, but I'm just saying. I think Nikita's capable of more. I think last year she started with the Kurt Covids or something, and then she came out with Fire after that. So, Nikita, I have faith in you to have a Fire name. Bradley in 7th for me with What'll They Do Next? It was okay team name last year. He drafted Waddle again, so, he lost points for having the same team name as last year. There's the Skybusters, the Straight Cash homie. They don't really change their name with their players. They kind of stay solid. And then we won't even talk about the bottom 5 teams, Garrett, T, Willie, Jesse, and Hammer. They didn't even change their team names or update them. They're last year. They don't have those players anymore. Those guys fucking stink.
Yeah.
And I think I gave T a great option. He has Tua. I think T, I said go Tua, Infinity, and Beyond. And T didn't even update it. He didn't even take the gold I gave him.
Yeah, I mean, he has Bijan, so he could go Tua, Infinity, and Bijan.
Oh, T, you're absolutely wasting golden opportunities here. Fuck. All right, Josh, we are just at an hour right now, so it's time for us to get the fuck out of here. But on Tuesday, folks, we are back to our 2-a-week schedule. On Tuesday night, I guess we haven't picked a time yet. Josh and I will discuss, but Tuesday night will be Josh and I's fantasy long season predictions, so just our studs and duds for the year. Guys, we think we will perform well and perform poor for the year. And other fantasy predictions you want to throw out there.
Did we already do our studs and duds for the year?
No.
Yeah, we did.
When?
I don't know. Walters, help.
We did not. But yeah, so that's what we're doing, and then we'll be talking. Well, most of us will be done drafting. I might have a draft going Tuesday night, but no big deal. It'll be going on in the background. So we'll give all our takes on all the fantasy players because we can't give away all our nuggets before we draft our team, especially when we compete with the Walters and the Als of the world. But we'll be giving our fantasy season-long predictions. Nice. And then Saturday morning, we'll have our NFL preview show. Hope everyone's excited for football. It is finally here, less than a week away. Josh, go ahead and hit that go Packers so we can get the F out of here.
Go Packers.
Beautiful. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you Tuesday evening. Bye-bye.
Go Packers.
Hello, Walt.
Everybody's team stinks.
Dude, your team stinks.
Yeah, I would agree. I do like Team 2, though. Team 2 looks pretty good.
Now we're talking, Walters. Now we're talking.
So what are we thinking? We thinking Call of Duty in like 5 minutes?
We can. Hold on. I don't know what this sounder's going to be, but here, let's just play this.
I farted and a poopy almost slipped out.
Oh, God.
Thank you, my instance.